to that. July meetings, we took the July meeting just because the Soul and Home Days, we usually are participating in that in some form or fashion. We have a room reserved in July, but just kind of, if there are people wanting to have a meeting, we can do a meeting, but it also saves us some money if we kind of take a hiatus for the summer and let people not have to worry about coming to a meeting in July. So just wanted to kind of start talking about that as well. That having been said, thanks for coming. I'm going to hand over to Doug here for a second, and we can kind of kick things off. Again, thank you all for coming tonight. You know, we try really hard to make our meetings a very open forum. We want to have that collective thought. You know, there's a lot of things have been said about the primaries that just happened a couple of weeks ago. You know, at the end of the day, you know, everybody has the opportunity to speak their mind, and then, you know, the great thing about the country is, you know, hopefully we kind of say, okay, this is the direction, and so then we kind of start moving on from there. So I hope that for those of you that are new to our meetings, that you see this as an opportunity to come and hear a lot of different opinions. Some of you are not going to agree with it, and that's okay in here. This is kind of that cone of silence. We can all come in here and just speak our minds, and then when we walk out of the room, you know, we're all better for having gone through that process. So, but thanks for coming, and hand over to Doug.
Our team already. I don't know, that's going to be a stereotype we have to work with. Anyway, tonight we're going to do something a little different. Generally what we do is we have somebody come to be a speaker and something that they know about. Like last month we had Peter Kirsanow, and Peter, of course, is so well known that it's just a joy to listen to him. Sometimes we like to have more of a dialogue than a presentation, and tonight is one of those dialogue times. One of the things that I get to do, which is a real joy to me, is on Sunday nights at 9 p.m., I get to be one of the co-hosts and producers of a radio show called The Avenue. And we talk about culture and entertainment. It's not a political talk show. And the four of us, it really is in some ways kind of a cultural experiment. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves as soon as our fourth member wanders in here from wherever he was. Oh, there he is.
I had to sort of my past.
But anyway, the fascinating thing about this is some of the discussions we have are really interesting to me. All right, and I'm a Solon resident, a longtime Solon resident, and I fit the category of, you know, older white Republican residing in Solon. So whatever stereotype that may entail. Now, Darvio and Andre obviously, you know, are a little bit different than I am. They're younger, hipper.
Thank you. I thought you said older white Republicans in drag.
Exactly. And so what I'd like to do before I go on to the rest of the discussion, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. I'm Doug Magill. I think most of you know me. I am the communications director for the Cuyahoga County Republican Party. I'm also the communications director for Jack Schron's campaign. I'm on the board of directors of Alternaterm. I do voiceover work, I do freelance consulting, so I do a lot of different things, none of which makes much in the way of money. But the thing I enjoy the most is doing this radio show, because it truly is a cultural experiment. So, Dre, if you would introduce yourself and come on up to the head table here.
Sure. Hi, how are you? My name is Andre Cato. Is this being recorded? Do I need to go?
No.
Hello?
Oh, no.
No, I'm just checking. Sometimes when there's a recording, I don't work on that side of things. They want to make sure that
He's just recording.
Nice, clear signal, Doug. I'm really being professional. My name is Andre Cato. I am born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and I live currently in Lakewood. I'm an actor and a musician. I'm a co-host of Darvio Morrow, and we came to liberate Doug's mind. And I'm happy to be here tonight to have this forum and this discussion. From a button-down mind state, like Bob Newland.
That's true.
Yeah, that's it. for the most part. I'm currently working on the Avenue, and I'm also embarking on a new project that's a business talk show called Let's Do Lunch. Very good.
You never said what station you're on. I mean, what's the
I'm sorry?
What station? I mean,
WHK AM
oh,
1420,
I think it was station. What is it? 9 p.m. Sunday.
9 p.m.
That's
Sundays.
probably the only time I'm not listening it. So
I can see it's going to be tough to get
all day long, but not 9 p.m. Sunday.
I think we've got the right mindset already.
All right, well, I'm going to try to follow that. My name is Darvio Morrow. I am the creator and one of the co-hosts in this merry band of misfits that we call The Avenue. And again, it's Sunday nights at 9 o'clock on the AM. Also, I work on other radio projects. I'm currently getting ready to launch a show on ESPN as well. And also, we work on some television projects together, and just generally speaking, I've been in radio, television, entertainment in general for about the last 10 years or so. Right.
Good evening. I'm Brittany Williams. I'm the fourth co-host of The Avenue. My day job is the executive director of the Republican Party of Cuyahoga County. But I come to The Avenue. I was born and raised in Bedford High School grad, did my schooling at Case Western, then Johns Hopkins, and came back to Cleveland to work in politics. My background is in fundraising primarily. Did fundraising for Senator Voinovich, Senator Portman, Matt Dolan's campaign for county executive. Was down in the treasurer's office for a little bit doing economic development work, and then came back to be executive director in 2012. And I got looped in on the Avenue project last year. WHK was looking for a new, fresh programming idea. Many of you who do listen to the station know a lot of it is just straight political programming with Hugh Hewitt, Michael Medved, and some others. They were looking to branch out into different topics and also looking to reach a younger audience and try to bring in new listeners to the station. So that's how we got here, and I am very surprised that the two entertainment professionals failed to mention that if you can't listen to us at 9 p.m., you can catch us on iHeartRadio, and also our podcasts are on iTunes. So you can listen to us all week long.
Good job!
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Give a woman a microphone.
Lord knows I myself talk. So.
As do we, of course. Now, one of the things that I was extraordinarily pleased with one evening when we were doing the show, Darvio told me that I was developing quite a following with older black people. And to me, this was relatively startling because I've lived in Detroit, lived in the Bronx, but I would never say that I've developed any fans there. But he said, I'm the first white that they've heard that they didn't think was racist. Now, that's an interesting expression right there, because one of the biggest problems we have as Republicans is the image, right? The image is that we're white, we're old, we're racist. And I don't care what message we bring. If we don't get past that image, nobody will ever hear the message. Go ahead.
That's a message that's been sold.
I know.
It's a non-deserving message. So I wouldn't say that that's an inherent message. That's a message that's
It's a
being
strategy.
sold.
It's a strategy. I
Exactly.
understand that. But
It's
this
a
is
strategy.
This is one of the ways we break that.
Right.
And this radio show, for instance, there's nothing like it on Cleveland radio than this. This is unique and unusual. And so we're really here to have a discussion with you. And the reason that I wanted Darvio and Andre here in particular is to talk about those things. There really isn't anything that we can't talk about within the framework of this meeting that you should be nervous about. And frankly, one of the things that I'm trying to do by having this meeting is to talk about those stereotypes and those images, and how do we get past that? And as a communications guy, I can tell you one of the things that I need to worry about more than messaging is imaging. How do we get the image out there that we care, that we're interested, and that we're not racist? So anyway, questions or talk, or we'll just talk up here. 'Cause we
So I'd probably put you guys in to have listened to the Avenue, so you would know exactly how unorthodox this is going to be.
That's true.
Now, just to real quick to address your point. I mean, that's a very valid point. I guess the counterpoint to that is, regardless of whether the stereotype is unfair or not, people believe it.
That's correct.
And, you know, it may be, you know, very, you know, people who have lied and used it for political purposes, but people do believe it. In their heart of hearts, they believe it, which is why when Doug referred to the conversation that we had, that was, what he said was a direct quote that I had heard from a listener. That was surprised, pleasantly surprised, that he, in particular, could relate to us on the show. And that, you know, wow, he's not racist. And that totally gave him and his viewpoints even more credibility once that barrier was broken. So that's the one thing that I would say is that, yeah, a lot of it is unfair. I mean, there's racists in both parties. So the fact that one party gets the rap harder than the other is not true and unfair, but people believe it. So the question is, what do you do about it? You have to address people where they are and not necessarily where you would like them.
Dennis, you had a question?
Well, 2 points. I would prefer to listen to you on radio, but you need to convince your station to boost the power back up.
Yeah, I know.
Because it is difficult at best to listen to it in song.
No comments.
Can we get a copy?
Run the flag up the pole on the left.
It'll be
That wouldn't be a bad thing.
And actually, the best way to listen to it on Sunday nights is go to whkradio.com and listen to it online.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or on the iHeartRadio app.
Or iHeartRadio.
And it helps your ratings doing it that way more than the other.
It does,
Very much so.
because they measure it.
Yeah.
They don't measure it, you know, over the air, but if people log on to whkradio.com and listen, then they can tell how many people are online at any particular time.
And that was something that we were legitimately told when we first started out, because we originally started out with an hour, now moved to 2 hours, and what they were saying is we had the highest rate of people tuning in at the beginning and staying all the way through. A lot of times when people were logging in online to listen and to stream it, you know, they were listening for like 10, 15 minutes and cutting out, but they were very impressed that, because we're kind of like guinea pigs, and it's a test, because WHK, like I said, doesn't have any program, any open dialogue like this, of this nature on the station currently, and for them to see that our show was having an audience and pulling people in was a surprise for them. We knew we were good, but it's good to have that verification.
And I think that the guinea pig comment is very, very accurate, because we still scare them sometimes.
We do.
Because
They're not sure what to do with us.
Yes. But yes, your
One
other
comment of content at hand. I couldn't agree with you more, but there's fault to be placed and to be pointed at on both sides, from the R's and the D's. One paints a picture, and the other one allows it to continue to be painted without stepping up and being part of the solution and not part of the problem. I have multiple African-American clients. We have dynamic conversations. They're D's. I'm an R. But what we do is we do agree on the things, the core values, that is intrinsically important to them no less than they are to me. And that's the economy, jobs, income, and my family. Their family and my family, all right? And living in a better place. So what we really need to be able to do is stop looking at one another as being different colors, but having the same wants and needs and desires, and working to solutions that create and provide those opportunities for all.
I would definitely agree with everything that you said. The one point that I would add to that is, I think sometimes what tends to happen, what I've seen happen is sometimes things tend to get lost in translation. Because even though, we're all one human race, we're all people, but there are cultural differences. And I think sometimes, a lot of times very innocently, not meaning any harm, but there are things that, one group of people may say that they don't interpret it the same way that another group of people does. And I think sometimes that is how the message can kind of get muddied and people can get offended, because there's just not enough cultural dialogue and cultural exchange from both sides of one side trying to understand the other and vice versa. So I do agree, absolutely agree with what you're saying, but I think sometimes what happens in practice is that sometimes things get lost in translation.
Yeah, and one of those things is, it can be subtle sometimes. There are words that we use that aren't expected to be problematic, but they are. One of the things that, I've learned clearly is not to say, hey, what do you people think? and that's, when you say you people, you're kind of generalizing, and Darvio lives in Collinwood. I think Dre lives in Maple Heights right now. They both grew up in this area, but I don't think they represent anything more than Darvio and Dre. But if I say you people and expect them to speak for all black people, that's not right. Any more than if they say you people and expect me to speak for all white people.
Now, we do that sometimes just to pick on Doug.
Well, that's understandable, right?
Can I say something? Because we can all theorize about words, impression, but I just want to go back and kind of a real type of question, a real name. Because you said, on the first question, you said, but reality exists that people thinking like old white men are racist or whatever. But when I'm thinking about that, it's like, who you listening? Who is authority who is kind of giving you the idea that it is? Because the question that I would have to Andre, I think, and I'm sorry, Darvio, that, for example, if I'm looking at two figures in a black community, kind of that, if you will choose between, for example, that we can think about someone, we can talk about, for example, Dr. Ben Carson, and for example, on the other side will be Reverend Al Sharpton. Can you explain to me why any kind of, just you, for example, would take something from Al Sharpton and would not listen to Ben Carson, or vice versa? Just, I'll give you two names. Can you compare them?
Sure.
What is in your head, or someone that can just, when they're thinking about these two personalities?
Sure. Well, let's address the great Reverend Al first. And this is one thing that, this is known kind of in black circles, and this is, we kind of laugh about this. This is probably going to be controversial to some people who are going to see this video, but
Let's do it, come on.
Most black people do not hold Al Sharpton in as high esteem as most white people. Right, that was a very polite way of saying it. I think, thank you, I've been working on that. I think, that's one thing that, I know from my family and people that, in my inner circle and outer circle, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, we laugh about that sometimes because in certain circles of the African American community, he's a joke. He's a joke.
He's a racist.
And particularly age-wise, the younger you go, the less that there is a certain esteem held for Al Sharpton as there was in older generations. There's an age divide there. Now with Dr. Ben Carson, I would argue that there's not enough black people that know about him in this life.
Here we go.
And part of
whose fault is that?
Both. I don't see Dr. Carson doing a ton of interviews in black media.
Is that because they don't ask him?
Right. I think it's a little bit of both.
I think he'd be willing to. It sounds like every time I've heard him speak, all he wants to do is get his message out and be heard. I would venture to say if he wanted to go speak at a college commencement, he would be told not to come in many cases, as we've seen.
Yes, Condoleezza Rice was shut out.
Now, I would almost, and I would counter that with this. I'm not talking about the college commencements and the kind of the traveling circle that people tend to try to go to when they want to reach out to black people. I'm talking about, I don't see a lot of outreach from him or the party in general. There's not a ton until recently. This is the year that they really started. There was never a ton of money spent in black media. There was never a ton of time spent in promoting Republican messages in black neighborhoods. You have to go where the people are. So I would argue there's African Americans that respect Dr. Carson from his as a doctor. I mean, there was a movie made about him called Gifted Hands, etc. But there's a lot of African Americans that don't know where he stands right now. And when you don't reach out, and you can argue that it's both sides.
Well,
It's both sides, but you have to reach out. I don't see enough of that.
There's two things to be said about that. You've correctly, I think, identified one of the issues. We have a media problem here, getting our message out in spite of the media, because it is overwhelmingly left-wing and overwhelmingly wanting to carry a theme forward. And that theme is that white Republicans are racist. So our job as communications people is how do we get past that? Well, this radio show is one way. The second thing is Republicans have not done a good job of reaching into the minority community, and I speak beyond just black community. And you know, when I was helping Britt's team out at Republican headquarters downtown during the 2012 election, I was astonished how many people called me up from inner city Cleveland and said, where are the Republicans? We got Democrats running around touting Obama and talking about Obama, but we don't see any Republicans down here talking about McCain or anything else. That's a problem, and so they're working on that now. But go ahead.
Let's talk about that for a second. I'd like the perspective to say, what would you like to hear from the Republicans? What would be the ideal message?
And why does there need to be a message in the first place?
Right.
Why do the Republicans need to have an agenda for the white community, have an agenda for the Latino community, have an agenda for the black community? Why can't it just be the community agenda?
Because that's not the way people think.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I want to hear you.
All right. I think you really hit the nail right on the head. I think you brought a wonderful point up. And I think that one of the things is conservatives are the social equivalent of a type A personality and need to be neatly wrapped and perfect. Now, full disclosure, I said
Can you speak up?
conservatives are the social equivalent of type A's, and they need to have everything neatly wrapped. So you don't understand when your world like this little thing is out of the way, it's a little bit out of order. You guys are the monks. You know that TV show? That's who you are to me. Now, full disclosure, I must let you people know. I am not one of you. I'm God's creation. To those that are God's children, I'm one of God's children. I'm a living, breathing human being who bleeds. I have really nappy hair that gets nappier the older I get, and tougher the comb as it goes through the day, so that's why I wear my hat. But, so I'm guessing I'm kind of vain like some of you. But I'm not a politician, and I am not a Democrat, and I'm not an independent, and I'm not a Republican, I'm not any of that. And quite frankly, full disclosure, I wholeheartedly don't even believe in the process. Now that being said, what I do believe is, I believe in people, I believe in our ability to be hopeful, to be powerful beyond measure. I believe in the ability for us to speak and breathe and think things that we want into existence. So the real question becomes then to me is, why isn't what you want coming into fruition? You have to look into the mirror. Beyond the mirror, you have to go beyond the eyes, which are the windows to your soul, and think about your mind. My friend in the back, Daniel, Dennis. Sorry, these eyes ain't what they used to be. I could have read to the back of the room once upon a time. So, R&D, what's that stand for? Research and development. Any Christians in the house?
Yeah.
Before I'm searching out the speck in your eye, what am I supposed to search out? Whose heart am I supposed to examine?
Your own.
Is it really not racist? Is it really not racist?
What's not racist?
The Republican Party.
I believe listening to your answer reveals to me that the stereotype exists on both sides.
Okay.
And just based on your description of what you call the social equivalent of what Republicans are, personally, it couldn't be further, in my eyes, for me personally,
Oh,
from the truth.
I've seen you at picnics and parties and gatherings. I know the truth. But just like good church folk on Sunday, you guys put on the uniform and talk the talk. Talk the ease. So you talk yourselves into a trap and into people not really feeling or getting the vibe. But beyond that, I'm glad you said the word stereotype. Usually a stereotype or a caricature or something satirical is been parodied because there is an element of truth there. Part of the examination, that research and development, because once you can search, you can then develop upon that truth that you found and make a good foundation, is the fact that we got to look at, is there any truth? Bill Cosby comes out and he says some things that we don't like to hear. And some people are like, yay, because they don't realize that he's kind of talking to them, including those white brothers and sisters out here. So it's like they say racist, oh, it stings, it hurts, probably because it's true and there's a little cut, even if it's a little cut.
No, it doesn't sting and hurt. The problem is that it's not true, and if you hear it constantly being pointed at you, it gets a little frustrating that let's just be people.
The encounter, it is about being people, but the encounter is, and I went to this massive mega church one time. If you go, the pastor used to say, if you run into somebody here and you do not like your experience, I do not want you to put it on the faith note. I do not want you to put it on me, the church leader. I want you to go politely excuse yourself and then go meet someone else. But I said where they're at. Where are you guys when it's not vote hunting season?
When I think of that,
The youth that you want to see transformed, when are you reaching them? When it's not to make your demographics look good, to make your numbers look good.
When you talk about in your answer there, it's about people, and you don't really believe in the process, then that gave credence more to my point that, there is no white community, black community, Latino community. It's one community.
It's
And also, it's not, just like in the Declaration, it doesn't say all black men or all white men or all women or all X group that you want to put are equal. It's all men are created equal. Or lowercase.
I have a point for that, but I know Brittany had something.
well, and I think from the party standpoint, I agree with you completely. It is one message. We are all, at the end of the day, and I've said this to the group many times, it doesn't matter if you grew up in Bedford or Cleveland or wherever, we're all in Northeast Ohio. We are all facing the same crappy economy. We're all looking for jobs. It doesn't matter what race, ethnic background you are, we are all in the same state. And I do not agree with the fact that we constantly, as you said, okay, we have to come up with a message for the black community. Here's our outreach for the black community. Okay, now we have to come up with a separate message for the Latino community. We don't talk to people like they're people. And that's the problem. We think that we have to put everyone into silos on political messaging. No. And that's the thing of, why are we viewed as racist? Why is it that I can't, in my capacity as executive director, why can't I find poll workers to go into the city of Cleveland? Why is it everyone calls up the party? We need to do outreach. There were precincts that didn't have any votes for Romney. Where were you when I was knocking on your door to knock on doors in those precincts to bring the message to them? So that's the thing. We're viewed as racist because we don't ever go. We don't break bread with them. We are not at community events. We are not speaking to the community just as people. And that's the thing of, we don't view ourselves as racist, but your actions a lot of times will speak louder than your words. And even though you don't believe that you are giving off this impression, a lot of times we as a party do, because we refuse to cross that boundary. I can't get people to work polls and to do outreach in, Governor Kasich is doing outreach in Maple Heights over Memorial Day weekend. And I've got people complaining they don't want to go into Maple Heights. My entire family is from Maple Heights. So it's that whole thing of, what perception are you giving when you're calling down to the party and you're asking why we don't have any Republican voters on the inner ring suburbs of Cleveland when I can't even get party members to go in there to do the outreach. So it all rolls together. If you are not there and you are not present, people think you don't want to come. People think you don't want to come because you don't want to talk to black people. That's really what it comes down to. And we got to break that down because there's absolutely no need for it. We're all in the same boat.
And I am preaching hard against separate messages for separate demographics. We really can't do that because by definition that is condescending. That you have to tailor your message specifically to a black person, to a Hispanic, or to an Asian. No, our message has got to be the same, and it's got to be spoken as if people are capable of understanding it and are willing to act upon it. There's no different message, really. The problem is, Jack Kemp said this once when he was running for president. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And caring means going into all these different communities, asking questions and making friends, talking to people. It's astonishing how easy it is. You know, I was at the Asian Festival on Sunday, and just walking around talking to people, saying, "Hi, how are you?" And I can't remember, guys are walking around with, their hats slung low and their pants low and the earmuffs in, go up and say hi to them and say, "What?" And I say, "Hey, how are you? What are you doing?" Oh, and then I have a 10-minute conversation. Sometimes it just takes that little bit of effort to go, "Hi, how are you?" But we don't do that well. That's a problem. Yeah.
And there's, real quick, I just wanted to address your point real quick. Philosophically, on a personal level, I get where you're coming from. And to a certain extent, I agree with that. But I'm just going to tell you what other people have told me when they hear that. Now, this is not necessarily me saying that I agree with it, but I'm going to tell you how I've heard people interpret that. When people say, well, why do we need to reach out to the black community and the Hispanic community and the Asian community? How come we can't just reach out to one community? What some people interpret that is that you want me whitewashed. What some people interpret that as, well, I can't be in this party and be both authentically Republican and authentically black. And that serves the purpose of both shooting at black Republicans who take it from all sides, and stopping anyone who would be open to the message to converting, because they feel like they have to lose a piece of themselves in order to assimilate into the Republican Party.
There you go.
Why?
So, because that is the way that people interpret that. Because look, we, myself, Andre, we are African American. We are black people. Now we have groups.
Are you an American before you are a black individual?
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm a black American. I don't see.
Are you intrinsically different from me as a white American?
Culturally, yes.
Well, but
In
I'm a
many
Hungarian
cases.
American. I was born in America. As you were born in America, I had very strong cultural ties to my nationality. And even though my parents escaped from Hungary to leave communism, but all of my family is still in Hungary, and I consider myself Hungarian, but I'm an American first.
Well, submitted from the Department of Redundancy Department, to quote Groucho Marx. I am, I guess, a black American, but there is no other American cannot be necessarily without great research, perhaps from Dr. What's his name, Skip. I cannot necessarily be a Kenyan American. I cannot necessarily be a Jamaican American or a Dominican American.
But that whole idea of putting something before American is inherently un-American in itself.
Well,
I would
Our
actually
founding
say
principles
it's in,
teach us that we are all one community.
well, here's the problem that I have with that. That is completely ignoring that there are differences in culture. A perfect example. Let me address that. No, that's not true. Let me address that. One of the things that we kind of inside, we joke with Brittany and stuff like that, because she grew up around a lot of black people. So she has a lot of things culturally in common with black people because of her experiences and because of where she came from. So if we can separate, so let's move the race label out of it for a second. There's still cultural differences.
In all
There's cultural
cultures,
differences
though.
based on,
In all
well,
cultures.
of course
Big fat Greek wedding.
of course in all cultures, but I'm black, so I can't speak for
No, but I mean,
Big Fat
is
Greek
it not
wedding.
the same though? Is it not the same?
Well, there's cultural differences. That's true, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with acknowledging that. Is denying reality.
I absolutely agree with you, because this is something that we can all say that this gentleman is saying this is absolutely true, or Republican was saying this, but this is just closing eyes on reality, because what is 100% true, and when we say we don't want different message, kind of, we're all for that purity, for the same message. This is not in reality, because with this type of approach, we're going to lose all everything that's coming up to us, okay? We have to adjust, we have to really be open to understand and some kind of, to listen what different community, what type of messages they need. But when you're talking about cultural differences, I am more interested about the values which is in these communities. Because I think this is where we can get to share and get in touch with each other and understand each other more, you know, because I think values, okay, could be much more closer than some kind of cultural differences. I think we both can talk about.
Bobby, you want to
So,
say?
I just wanted to address that.
Can I say something before you talk
Hold on
again?
a second.
I think what happens so many months of this group is, it's like they say, preaching to the choir. Why are we here? Because we're not racist. We're interested, we want to help, we want to break through it. You feel so strongly about it because you're trying to defend your family, yourself, and how you feel. And I'm the same way. Solon, I think, is the least racist place in the world because there's just so much diversity. In schools, the kids date each other, you know, all the nationalities. In my church, we have black people, and it's a Methodist church. It's not like Parkside where there's 8 million. And I think it just makes puts us on the defensive. Because we say we know how we feel, but we can't talk for all the old white people. I mean, he's so strong about it. Well, I didn't get to make my point yet, but he's so strong about it. And you sound like my son, and you know, he was raised to feel the way you do. But we can't blame them for feeling the way they do. It's a matter of how you grow up.
Can I respond? All right, so you're a communications person. What happens when somebody is told the same message over and over again?
They tend to either believe it or to ridicule the person that says this.
Well, if they tend to believe it, what happens when the black community or the Asian community or the white community is inherently told, you are different from the...
Oh, I think that creates problems. It creates that sense of...
So it's perpetuated by the media and everyone else constantly saying,
It is.
you are different, I am different.
And what we need to do is find a way to get by that. Now, let me give you a short little example. A friend of mine was a man named Frank Stubb. Frank his parents immigrated here from Italy. Frank founded a restaurant supply company, all right, on Finkel Avenue in Detroit. And we're talking about a really deep, dark neighborhood and not a good place to be under any circumstances. Anyway, Frank's Italianness was so much more important to him than anything else. He was enormously grateful to America for giving him opportunity, but he founded what's called the Italian American Club. And this ended up having enormous political influence. And he went so far as to advocate that they stop using Italian stereotypes in terms of mafia in the movies and stuff like that. He met the Pope, he got audiences with the president and stuff like that. So he considered himself an Italian American more than American. And he took total advantage of every gift that was given him. So the question is, you know, what did we as a party do with something like that? Well, we co-opted him and say, fine, bring the Italian Americans in. But I'm not going to give him a special message. I'm not going to do anything special to him because he's Italian. But if he chooses to define himself that way, that's okay. You know, and if they want to define themselves as black Americans, that's okay too.
Well, and I
Then
want
you're
to,
gonna
because I have a direct correlation to that.
Good.
So I lived in Italy for a year for my grad degree, and the Italians that were there, remember my friend Marco comes up and he's like, you're the only one here who says that they're American. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, everyone I ask, oh, what's your background? Where are you from? Oh, I'm German American. I'm Italian American. I'm this, I'm that. And he goes, you know, you Americans are the only ones who do that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by we're the only ones? He goes, every other country, you ask them whether I'm British, I am German, I am Brazilian, I am Chinese. He's like, you have Italian ancestry, yes. He goes, would you say you're Italian American? I'm like, well, you know, sometimes I do. He's like, were you born here? No. You know, was your family, was your mother and father born here? No. Do you speak the language fluently? Did you spend your formative years in Italy? Because you're not Italian American. You are American. And it is a phenomenon that we do have in the United States where we do still, and it's one of those, I'm proud of my ancestry, I am really proud of my culture, and there are still cultural differences, especially in Northeast Ohio, because we have such a rich ethnic history of all the different groups that moved here. But that's where I think we need to separate, because there's also two different concepts that we're missing. I think we have a uniform message, because the party and the principles and what we believe in stays the same, but how we communicate that message is going to be different within the different communities, because it's recognizing, because yes, we do have different experiences in life and experiences that come about because of our upbringing and because of our ethnic background. And it's valid to recognize that, admit that we have those differences, and that's going to impact how we communicate. But when it comes to the core values that we are putting in that message, those I think will be the same across. And it's like
As
you
they
said,
should be.
finding the values that we have in common
Right.
and working from there. But that's the thing, of the messenger is almost just as important as the message
Yeah,
itself.
the messenger is very important here. And by the way, you know, I'm a Christian practicing, Darvio's a Christian practicing, Andre's a Christian practicing, Brittany's confused, so we're just leaving that.
I'm a born-again Christian, very much. Throw that down.
But, you know, those values, I think, are stronger than any differences between us because we all believe in Christ and we all believe in the message that he brought. So from a practical standpoint, I know this about these guys, and it makes it a lot easier for me to...
What if you're not Christian?
What if
I
you're
love
not-
you anyway.
So if I'm not Christian, my
No,
morals aren't as
I'm
good
only
as
using that as
Christian?
No, but I think
That's
he's
not
using.
true.
I think he's using that as an.
Exactly.
Well, I think he's using that as an example. That's another.
Well,
culture.
that's
That's another.
focusing on a certain.
But this is the reality. This is when you try to deny that, you're going to lose a bunch of people before you even start, because this is the reality. We all know, the four of us, there's a lot of things that we have in common because we do share a lot of similar values. We have similar upbringings. There's a lot of things that we
Whether you're
agree
Christian,
with.
Jewish, or
Yes.
agnostic, or anything
Yes.
else. So we
And
should
I'm
put
beyond.
that
Let's
aside.
put that aside for a second. I'm talking broadly speaking. Value system broadly speaking. There's a lot of things that we have in common. And there's some things that we don't. And that's okay.
Style, for instance.
Yes, exactly. We've been trying to work on it for months, and it just doesn't take hold. But there's things that we have that are different, and that's okay. It makes the unit strong. Accept and embrace the differences. We exchange things with each other about how we brought up. Even though Andre and I are the same color, there are things culturally that are different between us because of our experiences, and we all accept that. I think it is very dangerous to deny that there are differences. I think what we
it's
all.
very dangerous to say, well, you're a Christian. I think that should be.
Oh, well, I'm off. I'm past.
One thing
past.
is, in fact, my sociology teacher decades ago was black. And one thing, all the white folks who come here, they can assimilate. But you're still black. Biologically, there's no difference between any of us. There's no such thing as race, biologically. But culturally, there is. And that's part of the problem.
Well, we gotta get to the root of that. I'm glad you said that because that's one of the things. Observing
That's
that
true.
difference, like you just said, I'm gonna always, in a system that's a caste system, really, right? Based on quote unquote perceived race or my look, I'm gonna always be able to stand out. I'm gonna always be able to stand out for that reason. And so that right there is how you receive credibility. That's a cool white boy.
Right. That's
To
what
give
we-
you what, to give
that's
you
what
an
we
end,
said,
to give you
because-
behind closed doors
exactly.
conversation, which with this thing going on with Donald Sperling is another part of looking inside our hearts. What are the behind closed doors conversations that we're all having about one another, pro and con? This is what's happening. This is what's pouring out to the street. Your message is not getting there. Either you're not really communicating it well, which is, we're ambassadors, right? Whether you're an ambassador for whatever you believe in, however you grew up, whatever you love, art, music, dance, bricklaying, whatever. You're an ambassador for that. So someone's going to be meeting you for the first time. You're going to be the person that they meet. How are they going to walk away knowing you? How are they going to walk away thinking of the party? Because you just became their stereotype. Did you live up to the stereotype, or did you live up to the dream? Did you give them Barack Obama's hope?
And I mean, and to address, to piggyback off of that, right? To piggyback off of that, you know, there are experiences that I've had, you know, in diverse backgrounds from going to private school. I went to Christian school my entire life, and for most of my academic career, the vast majority of people that were around me were white, and so in that environment, you get to understand people better. You understand people differently because you're with each other. You're spending the night at each other's houses. You're eating together. You're playing basketball together. You're doing all of these things together, and that brings a stronger unit. You know that there's differences, and in a lot of my circle of friends, we're so close, we tease each other about it. We don't care. But we acknowledge that there's differences in culture. It just is. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it makes your bond with people stronger when you accept your similarities and your differences.
Very much so. I'm the older, wiser, mature voice on the show.
If you believe that, you haven't heard the show.
But it is, in fact, and Bob Newhart said this once, good comedy is based on friction. And I think good entertainment is based on friction and differences. We are all different in terms of, we have some shared values, as I said, but we are very much different in terms of personality, background, experience, outlook. But that's what makes the show fascinating, because we make it work.
And we're scared of friction. I mean, I'm pretty much, I guess you could say, the Kanye West. You're going to like some of what I say, you're going to hate some of what I say, and I'm still going to love you even if you hate it and not care if you do. But in a certain way, this guy's taught me, sometimes I do have to care if you do hate it. And you have to care enough if it's important to come to me and say, I really hated that. And I have to say, well,
Let
why?
him know.
Why did you hate that?
Right.
What did it mean to you? What toe did I step on? What nerve did I hit? And we don't take that time. We're scared to fail. One reason you haven't heard about my program that much, our program that much, is Salem Communications is scared to fail.
They're not sure what to do with it. John, you had a question?
More of a comment, to kind of follow up on what Bobby was saying. And I think that, people and communities can learn a lot from the city of Solon. I've been here over 40 years. Spent 15 years on city council. We're a multicultural, very diverse community. And I'd like to say, well, city council decided that's the way we should be. No, that didn't happen. You know how we became diverse? It happened. It happened. People moved in. The other people looked at them like people. And that's why we have the community we have now. There was no, well, this one's Asian, this one's black, this one. That everybody just accepts each other for what they are. And you couldn't have a better community than the city of Solon.
Are we? Our integration and diversity, we like these buzzwords, and I think they become safe, and I think we almost speak them into existence and speak validity to them without being very careful about what we're saying. I just heard you say how diverse this community is, and that's based on your perception because you live here. I do not live here. The times I've been here, I've scarcely seen much diversity. There was a very fly young lady, I don't know what, she was at the front of the house. I did try to invite her back here. Right?
We grabbed him.
Anybody who loves attraction, raise your hand. All right, so you can all bond around that. Likewise, recently, the most recent experience I had here, believe it or not, my partner and I went and stepped into a meeting, and we stood out because of our complexion, and we were confronted by a political official from here, and we left there feeling some kind of way about it. When we were actually there to do business with someone else. And we were stepped in and said, oh, can we help you guys?
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Oh, they're busy right now. Well, I didn't think this was your establishment. Could you please move yourself out of my way? I'm a perfect gentleman, capable of handling myself.
So that was fear.
Sure. The other thing was, the most recently I heard about your community, and this is not to make a sweeping indictment of it, but one of my friends told me that there were some children that were going door to door selling candy, and someone thought that they were, I guess, the village idiots. They were going to go door to door to the front door of these households and predominantly, or what seems to be a predominantly white community, to an outsider, and try to rob them.
Remember that? 6 years ago.
Perception.
The perception is that
And the story lingers.
AA is about a law of attraction. If you go someplace, may I finish this first? Because this is important. We don't take the time to pat each other on the back. I'm not from this guy's world. I'm 39 years old, no matter how good looking I am. He's not even from this guy's world, really, anymore. This man has something to tell us, and what they have that we don't respect and appreciate, while it may need to be harnessed, he's got that urgency that we need to get. He's got the simplicity of life that we had before we got banged up and got all these isms. We should be seeking out to this guy to be one of our healers, and we need to commend him. Yeah, it won't jump around, and we need to listen. He's going to want to defend his own viewpoint. That's where the maturation comes in. To be like, all right, son, settle down, rein that power in. There's a way to throw a punch that you follow through, but you don't use all your energy. But we need a sense of wanting to win the fight today, because that's not there. I've been to several events, and it's still old white haired dudes. That shows me you don't have a real sense of urgency about change. We're at WHK, and this is nothing I'll say behind their back, that I don't say to their face. They don't have a sense of urgency about transformation. That's why they try to baby step it and be careful. And they don't realize the joy and the beauty they're missing of succeeding by being daring enough to just jump from a plane, like bungee jump. Pardon interruption, but I do believe that we really need to take time to praise young people because we don't do it.
Very good. Aggie, go ahead.
Okay. I think the important thing is you have your value system and you live your value system and you treat other people the way that you would like to be treated in that situation. You can choose to be happy or you can choose to carry it on your shoulder as a chip. Everything is in your control in any situation, as far as how you react to the person that cut you off on the freeway, to whatever situation happens. It's how you react to that situation. Choose to be happy and don't let what's happened in that little situation ruin your whole day. It's not worth it. You can really have a wonderful life no matter what obstacles are put in your way.
I think that's absolutely true, but
No, I don't listen to Dennis Playground at work.
I think that's absolutely true, but most of us think at it, so we're all a work in progress. I think that's absolutely true.
That was my New Year's resolution 2 years ago, and every day I try to choose to be happy. I don't always succeed, but it really makes a big difference in just how you can let things go that are just
Absolutely.
meaningless.
And that's the struggle that we all have in life. You know, to not let experiences that we have with certain people or certain groups of people cloud our entire viewpoint of those people or that city or that neighborhood or whatnot. And we're imperfect. We're imperfect people. So we all have isms and prejudices in one way or the other that we all need to work on.
What does anyone think is going to be gained from bringing new life or non-traditional members of the community to the party, or traditional members to the community as new members to the party? What do you guys hope to get? Because I think sometimes we're going to go out and rescue people, and this has been my viewpoint in life. We're going to go save someone. I'm going to be in this person's life for this season to make this powerful difference. And sometimes we miss the opportunity to be educated and learn from them, or we miss the opportunity to realize what they're going to bring and what they're going to school us on, how the universe is going to use them to inform our lives. So what is it, two questions for you guys, the whole room. What is it that you want to see happen with the people that come in new, with this fresh blood? And what is it you would like to have happen with the media, and including us, a non-traditional form of media, in helping to possibly bridge the gap between the communities?
You see, I want to answer this, but I kind of twice, my first question about Ben Carson and
Al Sharpton.
And you kind of just joked, explained that Al Sharpton, who is Al Sharpton.
I wasn't joking.
But then I was talking about that. But what answering your question is, I want to know what common values, which in a black community, let's go straight, which is important, why the black community is not defining values which Ben Carson bring into as versus Al Sharpton. At the same time, whom they will be listening to, what type of message it can get through, on what base. I mean, because I am at work talking with black people on the same, totally, we have no problem whatever communicate, because we have absolutely the same values, families, our problems, issues, financial, whatever it is, But if we're talking about it generally, if this gentleman or whoever will go for the meeting, do you think what they will be listening? What type of messages will stick? What type of messages will make them feel differently, a little bit, to think a little bit more about what it's care about. And when you were saying about fine points, it's a little bit fine points, we can hear, agree, disagree. This is not fine points, because in general between R and D, the huge differences, and what I'm considering is the values, because in general principle, for example, the role of person or the government, this is not fine point, this is just a measure, this is a main thing, the difference between R and D, if we are just generalizing this. But if you can answer, for example, if I will go tomorrow meeting to where it will be 95% Democrats, okay, and in the same time it will be black community, and percentage-wise I will be right? Because that's what vote was. What I can say, what I can say or bring that it will kind of to make people think that maybe this guy making sense.
Okay, I would definitely like to address that because those are all very good points. One, I think sometimes Republicans and Democrats too, they do this, and I think you have to separate the regular people from politicians and people who support them and work for them and have a vested interest in them. Those people, there are people that are on the hard right and on the hard left. The people that are on the hard left, you can't date them. What's most important is going after regular people. I would argue that there are a significant amount of African Americans who do share Dr. Carson's views more than Reverend Sharpton's. And I used to, when I was 19, I used to work on Al Sharpton's radio show, so I know what he's about. So, but the barrier when it comes to translating that to votes is this image that the party is racist. And black people or any people, any race, they don't want to feel like they have to check their ethnicity at the door in order to support a particular political point of view. So you have the combination of the image as well as when there are, what I have noticed is when there are some black Republicans that do step out there and they get pilloried, I do not see a ton of Republicans defending them as forcefully as they should. So you have black Republicans who are going to get beat up by the Democrats because they are a threat to the Democrats' political system. So they're going to get hit. They're going to get beat up. They're going to get attacked. But then you look on the other side, and with few exceptions, silence. That doesn't encourage anyone black or anyone of any other race to step out there and say, this is the party that I belong to, even though they may believe in the same things that you do.
Well, and there's a misunderstanding, I think. One is, I think to the more daring and edgy, that really doesn't bother you, because there's always going to be the first man through the wall that gets bloody. The problem is I don't mind getting bloody if there's going to be someone else that steps up. Regarding, I guess, quote-unquote race, which is gentlemen, there's an exhibit called the Race Exhibit. Anybody see it when it's here in Cleveland? If you look up this exhibit, it actually basically explains a lot of science. It covers the social part of how this was some colonial stuff to separate poor whites, Native Americans, whoever the West was trying to conquer at the time, to find a way to divide them and create a hierarchy to divide and conquer. So every time we engage in this, we're engaging in the enslavement of ourselves, the enslavement of masses, and we're paying homage and tribute to these very ignorant and woefully wicked men. That being said, you have to still know, like, we have to reach into history and into science sometimes to understand these academic areas or these social areas. Al Sharpton, do you know why he's a joke? Now, to somebody like Darvio that listens to his program and cares about all the, like, what I think
not
is
anymore.
like, all the stuff that gets in the
Paid
way.
to listen to it.
The reason for a guy like me why he is, the reason for a guy like me why he is that I'm of the age to have just known about Jones Beach. I'm of the age to have known about Tawana Brawley. And I'm of the age to have watched Al Sharpton repeatedly, like a lot of other organizations, including the Republicans. I've watched, he's one of those guys that you watch and he shows up for the publicity shot. But he's not the only one. Because if you love Ben Carson so much, How come I might not be on black media? You know what media I'm taking in. I'm taking a lot of underground stuff, really. We're going to have to later. But how come when I'm watching CNN, I'm not hearing about it? How come when your sources
Because
are...
they don't put him on.
Fox,
Why isn't he on NBC? Why isn't he on
Producers gotta put them on.
CBS?
Sure.
1, 2,
Answer the
3,
truth.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Me and this guy are not in. You guys all said you bought in. What did you do to make that happen?
To do what?
What did you do to make it happen?
And what happened?
To be cohesive around the idea of pushing Ben Carson, propelling him forward.
I didn't call stations and say, why do you not
I
have
got
it?
an answer for that. I think the gentleman's question over there was about values, and
Yeah, I
to
mean,
be
I
honest,
still did not get
There's
an
no
answer.
difference in value.
yes, exactly.
There's
That's
only
the point.
There's cool
That's the
people
point.
and there's jerks. You're either a cool person or you're a jerk. Now there may be grades of jerk. There are grades of black. We do not agree with one another. Our busters got shots a lot about things and vice versa. We're not like a monolith.
We're not monolithic.
So just by saying that, that's like one of the things where it's fair. I'm glad that you said it, but now that we got it on the table, there's no black person.
I understand, but it's not
look at
reality.
life
It's
through
not
that
reality.
This is
prism.
very
I
much
look
so
at,
reality.
like, let me bring up an example.
And I'll address that in a moment. I just wanted to give his point.
Let's talk about family.
Yeah.
Forget Democrat, forget Republican, forget a politician. The issue of family. I don't care who you are, I think every human being would agree that a family unit is good for everybody. I don't need to go into the black community due to any cultural differences. I'm Croatian. You guys would come into my house, you wouldn't know what to do with the food. So, I'm just telling you, so I understand the cultural differences. So, yeah, we would eat it.
And be polite
But
if it
my point
stinks.
is, I don't even look at the world through that color prism. All I look at are, Al Sharpton is a joke because of his actions over time. His actions over time created an image of a unsavory character. The actions of us, the reason Solon became quote unquote diversified, it happened over time. So the point I'm trying to make is these values reach across the board. To say that we need to tailor a message to go into the Asian community. Ben Carson speaks the message. We all agree on it because we see cross-culturally that the message is true and right. Just like Martin Luther King said, the content of that guy's character compared to Al Sharpton's, I mean, honestly, the producer should get fired at CNN.
Yeah,
Sit there and say-
wonders why he is on it.
Right. So, and it's because the producer's making the decision. But
And
those
all the
values transcend political lines, color, everything. Right is right. How you and I treat each other is everything. It's got nothing to do, I don't buy into the cultural differences. I understand them. It's a part of us. But I don't sit there, when a value is right, it transcends everything.
And I think that's-
Education, jobs. You want me to get jobs? I'm a small contracting company. I spend a lot of time in the hood. We do a lot of work down there. We're doing a project down at 89th and Huff right now. The guys want jobs down there. If you have no skills, you will never get a job. Period. End of story. So if a Democrat wants to come into the black community and say, I'm going to give you jobs, he's not giving you a skill which transcends all messages, which is with that skill, you can make a living to support a family.
Well, let me-
Those values cross over everything.
Let me address that. You're right, but where are the Republicans that promote that? I don't see a ton, especially those who get all of the attention. Where's that platform?
I think the people, the Republicans who do promote family, get labeled as crazy right-wingers, Bible bangers. You know, they just want to talk down to people.
And I would agree with that. And if you go into certain pockets of the black community, large pockets of the black community, they are some of the most socially conservative people you will ever meet.
Right, but
But the problem,
so why do they get labeled? They're just talking.
because
the truth.
the Republicans aren't there. They're not there. They don't go to where these people are. That is how African Americans in general, our approach to politics, and I'm not speaking for all of us because both of us don't necessarily agree with this particular way of doing things. Black people want to know that you connect with them before they will ever listen to your political positions. There are a lot, and you can go and talk to them in the city of Cleveland and in some other places. There are politicians that black people vote for that they don't agree with on anything. But they vote for them because that person has convinced them that they care about
Zach Reed.
That's true.
Perfect example. Zach Reed.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of exactly what you're talking about.
You have to
Mike
convince
Valencia.
people.
Well, and that's a community thing right there. That's a cultural thing you can learn. I always say, Clevelanders, there's too few of us to really be divisive. Black folks, there's too few of us with power to be divisive. There is a history, as much as there is of broken families, you have to really, really acknowledge that throughout the culture being here, part of the culture. Because there was a wave of us being here that had nothing to do with slavery. But part of the culture of being here since slavery, there's a lot of brokenness there. Eventually, if that's not tended to, then that PTSD transfers. There's division. The other thing before that division, out of that division, in a certain weird sense, which is now being melted away, possibly by media and eroding values, is a loyalty, a sense of loyalty. I was with one of my friends one day, walking down the street. What's up, man? He's like, you know that guy? You know him? Is that your friend? Is that your brother? Like, no, that's my brother. He's in my community. There's a sense of loyalty that doesn't, and you guys may or may not see this, there is no white unity really, except at rallies with guys that are really insane and burning crosses. But there is no cross-the-board unity. What we admire, though, from the other side of it is that there seems to be a collaboration no matter what, the possibility of collaboration just based on individual to individual among quote-unquote whites. But there's no white community. There's no...
Yeah, but wouldn't you find white community offensive? Wouldn't that mean that we're trying to exclude other people? I'm not
Well,
sure
and
how-
why are you on 89th and Huff? Gentrification.
What's that?
Gentrification.
No, we're not. No, we're fixing up the apartments. It's a HUD project where they're renovating the Kingsbury Towers there. That's why it's being done.
That's where the money is.
Somebody bought the.
I lived there
building.
when nobody was down there riding their bikes and jogging. And putting money into it. Recently.
I think you were getting at something I was talking about earlier, that that what is right. And I think when the Republican Party can just stop talking about different race issues. And
When did they start? When did they start? I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I have to address that. When did they start? And to go back to one of his points, our African Americans' viewpoint is not monolithic. However, if you look at history, 90% of black people vote Democratic today. Before the New Deal, when they voted for Republicans, they voted 90% for Republicans.
When did the Democratic Party start addressing race issues? Let me ask you that. And how's that work?
The Democratic Party, the New Deal. The New Deal, FDR was the first Democrat who won a majority.
And you would argue that that was a racial legislation?
With not the New Deal itself, but the strategy. If you go and look at history, they deliberately wanted to break up the monopoly that the Republicans had at the time on the black vote. Because the Republicans then are doing the same thing that the Democrats are doing now. They took the vote for granted because they got 90% of the black vote all the time.
Democrats were the major segregationists within the Congress.
Even to the
So
civil
to
rights
point
act
to the
itself.
New Deal as
Look up the percentage of
No,
the vote.
my question
Look up
is
the
this.
percentage of FDR's vote. That was
I
the
understand. They had a majority at the time. Democrats had a majority at the time. That's why the legislation got pushed through. If you look at 49 and that time frame after the war,
Look at
World War II, it changed over. It switched over to a Republican-controlled Congress.
Look at the percentage of the black vote that went to FDR and went to Democrats from that point on. And part of it was deliberately going out.
I may have a little bit of a different perspective on this, just not being from Cleveland. I pretty much, until about 3 years ago, spent my entire professional life in education in the South. So I also in a unique position that my father, when I was born, was 49 years old and fought in World War II. And so a lot of his friends that I grew up knowing, I can honestly tell you, more than once I heard Kennedy was the last Democrat I ever voted for. And there was something that happened right after that, when things started changing, at least in the South. And I think a lot of the perceptions of Republicans and all that kind of started sticking. A lot of people jumped the Democrats to come over the Republicans. There's a lot of things that happened after that time. And it just, I think a lot of that, transcends. I mean, it's a lot of history. At least where I grew up, and the stuff that you don't talk about, but when you're growing up and you got a lot of black friends and you hang out and you do stuff, you're growing up. But it wasn't until I was like teenager going off to college that, you don't, things were so institutionalized, things weren't said, but then you go out of the bounds of a certain area and people are pulling you back going, whoa, hey, what. No. We're not, no. So, it's there. I mean, we can talk about this all we want. The racism question, if it wasn't there, we wouldn't be talking about it. There are a lot of people that I think, particularly in this room, that I know have values that they're frustrated by the fact that they're not getting recognized and not advancing. And I think most people are wanting to find a way to advance that, and frustrated by the fact that it seems like a lot of the machine working against us. To that point, I agree. I think the Democratic Party is taking a lot for granted, just like the Republicans used to a long time ago. It makes perfect sense that it was swinging the other way when you think about Lincoln and everything that was coming through with that. He was a guy that kind of really started healing in a lot of ways the country. But it's out there. And just as an aside, one of the greatest things I was part of here just recently was working with the communications committee for the county Republican Party, and we all took different ethnic groups that we wanted to go out and kind of start doing, doing an analysis on, doing the R&D, kind of doing that, and find out what do we need to be really kind of concentrating on for this group, and kind of going down this road. But what I found the most wonderful part of that process was we were forced to go out to the community and talk to people. And I got more compliments for being there and asking what their opinion was than for trying to tell them what I thought they should be looking at Republican Party.
Taking the time to ask them.
And people were to that point, it's one of the areas I was the Jewish voters. And so I knew a couple of pretty hardcore Democrat Jewish people, and they even said, nobody's ever come and just asked us our opinion. Well, they just voted in the last Republican primary. And nobody really had taken the time to talk to them. And I think a lot of that, first of all, we have to decide what do we want the end result to be. And I think everybody can agree we want everybody to get together and we fix a lot of the problems, the values, and let's fix a lot of the issues that are addressing our country financially and all that kind of stuff. But to do that first, we've got to start listening to each other. We've got basically a bad marriage going on. The first step of a bad marriage is sitting down and listening to the other person's side and realizing, their side is just as valuable as yours. So,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Either one or both of you. Because the two of us worked on the same subject, on why Jews vote liberal. And we both took the time to survey people. Some of the information we brought back to our own committee, short of being tarred and feathered, we were ostracized, dismissed on what we found. I took exception to that. I could have said, the hell with it, quit, walk away. That's not being part of the solution. So part of the solution is to ask both of you men, where in the hell should we go to start having these impactful conversations and dialogue so that we can start to emulate and initiate a pilot for other counties, other states to replicate, but we need to be successful here. Whom do we talk to?
I want to thank you for inviting me to that question. That's very humbling, actually. And I got to commend you guys on your work and on your outreach. I think I'll let the distinguished gentleman to my right or the distinguished lady to my left. Who's in the field with you guys, tearing it up, and Doug's out there tearing it up. They may also have input. I think that's the first thing. I have to remember that this human being and that human being have a part to play in this and have ideas that are different than mine, but just as valid as alternative.
Now, I want to.
I will address. We work together on this.
Right.
I want to hear
I will address.
you all.
I will address that, and I'll address that first by there was something that you had brought up as well about that. I'm not in politics, but I've always been fascinated by politics, and I kind of pay attention to the process. And there's times where I'm kind of a geek, so I pay attention to the political process. And one of the things that I saw in the 2012 election that was fascinating to me was the ascendancy of the Republican Jewish coalition. And I was fascinated by that because they said, you know what? We are going to explicitly go after Jewish voters based on the things that we believe and that they tell us that they care about. And the end result, I paid attention. I'm a geek. I digged into the exit polling numbers and stuff like that. And even though Mitt Romney lost the Jewish vote, he won the largest percentage of it as a Republican that a Republican has won in decades. And part of that was because of a deliberate strategy to go after those people based on shared values and shared interests. I sat there and just someone as a fan of the process, I'll tell you this. I am more conservative than not politically, but there are a lot of times when the Republican Party pisses me off. So, but looking at that, I was fascinated because as a person of color, as a black person, I do not believe that it is good for the black community for their votes to not be competitive. I do not believe that that is good for black people. So when I saw that, it was almost envious. I was like, wow, why can't it? Because to a certain extent, it worked. It increased the percentage of the Jewish vote that Romney got.
Yes, it did.
So
I talked to that executive director 3 extensive times with Q&A coming back and forth. And he was most giving in the time.
I was
They wanted to make
fascinated
an
by
impact and share with what they did. And all we want to be able to do is the same thing,
Yeah.
reaching out. So there is no magic bullet. It's still
following the same that process. Now the message will probably be different. The way that message is put out there and the media uses to get that message out there may be different. But the format is there. The Republican Jewish Coalition did it. It worked to a certain extent. Did it get a majority? No. But you don't necessarily need a majority. You just can't be getting 5%.
Woody Allen once said 90% of success is showing up. And, when it comes to party outreach stuff, 90% of success is going out there, talking to people.
What Dennis says, though, where should we go? If we go to the Asian festival, but we're there for a candidate, it's like that doesn't count.
Oh, it counts. When I was talking to people, I was there for the Jack Shrine campaign, but I wandered around.
I know, so did I.
I
And
didn't
that's
stand
Saturday.
by the tent.
I wouldn't say that it doesn't count. Where it doesn't count is if that's all of it.
Right.
Where you show up during the election cycle, and then after the election cycle is over, you don't show up again.
Right.
That's when it doesn't matter. Because people aren't stupid. They look at it and they interpret it as you're just trying to swoop in, on close to election day to get our votes. And if you get our votes, you leave and you never come back. So it's not to say that showing up to those events for political purposes is useless. I think you should. You should go to the Asian Festival and the Glenville Festival and all of these different things to promote your candidate, because the Democrats are going to be there promoting theirs. But that can't be it. You have to do, the most important thing is, what do you do when there's not an election?
Well, because the most important thing is we need to build relationships, and that's been the largest problem. We do just fly in, and that's the thing. It's not just the Republican Party. The Democrat Party notoriously does this.
They do the same thing.
Yeah, because they take so many of the minority voting blocks for granted, and that's just been our consistent problem as Republicans. Of we don't know where to go, we don't know what to say, and we just try to do this, 5 months before an election. And it's just, no, there has to be a continuous building of a relationship, and that is, like Darvio said, it's going to festivals, it's going to churches, it's having a dialogue, knocking on doors. I mean, like I said, when candidates are going door to door, just the fact that I remember going out with Matt Dolan in Warrensville Heights, and it was one of those things that people were just like, why are you here?
Yeah.
But that's exactly it. Like, I'm here because I am a candidate, I have a message, and I want to make the county better, and you're a part of the county. So it's that whole, we just need to talk and engage, and that comes from very little actions in terms of you talking with neighbors, talking with your colleagues at work, and your colleagues at work, and just those small social interactions, but then also having a greater presence, of the Republican Party being at community festivals, community events, showing that we are engaged and that we're working to better Cuyahoga County as a whole and the state as a whole. And it also focuses on, in terms of our elected officials, like I said, the message is going to be the same throughout, but there are going to be different hot button issues within the community. So it is Governor Kasich teaming up with Mayor Jackson to work to rebuild the Cleveland schools. It is Governor Kasich passing legislation, ex-offender reentry, particularly it crosses in many communities, but that is a major, major issue that we're seeing. People can't get jobs because of a mistake that they made when they were 17. These are nonviolent ex-offenders and things. And that is our politicians stepping up and making changes to legislation that actually impact the community, and then being out and telling people that they're the ones behind it. And that's something that I know particularly Governor Kasich is trying to work on, just getting that message out. And then that's also where we need all of you helping to get that message out. So that's kind of from the political side of it. But it's just in general, being there, being present, and breaking bread and forming an actual partnership with people in a relationship, and not just coming by anytime you want them to vote in November.
Howard, you had a question earlier, didn't you?
I had a couple questions, but it's getting late. But at any rate, if I have the time to ask them, I'm going to ask them. First of all, what is a racist and what is racism?
Well,
And the meeting now ends at 11
We're here talking about this tonight, but we haven't defined what it is we're talking about.
Well, that's a very good question, and there are some definitions that are going to be different. The way that what I view racism as is a hatred or prejudice based on someone, against someone based on the color of their skin. So, racism does not necessarily mean that you hate black people. It may mean that you have some very prejudiced, preconceived notions about black people or Hispanics or Asians or whoever. To me, that is how I also define racism. It is based on hatred or prejudice. I think sometimes, and I was reading an article, again, like I said, sometimes I'm a geek. I was reading an article about this, and one thing that was pointed out is that both Republicans and Democrats misinterpret what racism is. On the Republican side, you tend to see typically racism just defined as the outward KKK, cross-burning, blatant, in-your-face racism.
Donald Sterling comments.
Exactly. Democrats tend to look at it as not only that, but also if you support particular political positions that they deem to be an affront to that particular community. That is how they define racism. Neither one is fully accurate. There is the blatant racism, like the Donald Sterlings and so on and so forth. But there's also the subtle racism that is based, to a certain extent, for some people, in lack of understanding of one another,
Yes.
where the prejudice is coming. So I think sometimes we lose this in translation because both sides have two completely different views of what racism really is. And as a result, real racism never gets properly addressed.
But when you were just saying prejudice or hate against black, Asians, Hispanic, why you did not include in the same time against whites?
That too.
Are we gonna? Yeah, I mean, but
That
somehow
too.
we did not go for even.
Well, I'll tell you this. Well, I didn't
Yeah.
because that was because we were talking about black people as part of the conversation. But I will tell you this, as a person who loves everybody and who has grown up around both blacks and whites, I see white racism too. I remember getting into a conversation, a discussion / argument in high school. I'll never forget this, with a girl, an African American girl that I was talking to at the time, who honestly and truly believed that black people were incapable of being racist.
There you go.
She honestly and truly believed that. And I thought that was insane. Because one of the things that I always say, the ironic thing about racism is not racist. Anybody can be racist. You can be a black racist, a white racist, a Hispanic racist, a Jewish racist, an Asian racist. It doesn't matter. Racism is just hate or prejudice based on someone, against someone based on the color of their skin. And I will tell you right here to your face, there are black racists too.
Well, you see that in
Without question.
the congressman from Mississippi who came out with those comments.
Yeah.
Why aren't there more black racists? I mean, if you think about it, in this country, I won't go without going too much into it. I'm not the biggest fan of the police, and I don't have a criminal record. I'm not the biggest fan of the police, and I don't have a criminal record, but I have a litany of run-ins I can tell you about. Why, from the time I get here, and there is something this guy was saying, that we do have this conversation. It's not just the black community. We do this conversation going on about race from the beginning, which is probably a good percentage of why we're here, just the conversation that's been given down to us. What's been handed down to us? Who's been heralded? Why I know more about Martin than I do Whitney's part in the March on Washington? Why, until a certain point in time, because I'm of a certain age, I was taught to shun and run away from Malcolm X, who probably is one of this nation's most effective leaders and an example of integrity and the potency of both being authentically niche and then being as big and as loving as one could possibly be. And one who's willing to come before, make mistakes and stumble, and open up and say, that was a mistake, or I've learned some new stuff, so I'm changing the viewpoint. We run from that. And that's part of our American legacy, not our Hungarian history, not our Puerto Rican history, not our black history. We have an American legacy, and we neglect the fact that, you know what? What do you think about Ben Carson now, Sharp? Because they're your people too, brother. You know, the fact that I just code switched on you. Can you do that when you're not making a mockery of it? Do you? You know, can I do it when I'm not making a mockery of it? Even if I don't hit the sound just right, the pronunciation just right, do I understand it? Whether I agree with it or think it's valid or not, do I understand that language that you speak? Do I understand your language? Do I understand where you come from? So that being said, back to what I was saying to you is, why in a country that is pretty steeped in oppressing everybody, which is why I think you have Polish Americans and German Americans, because at some point everybody had to come here and huddle up and protect themselves and form these collective gangs. And the gangs just grew bigger and fatter and healthier and wealthier and stronger, or were eschewed someplace where they were forced to take a stronghold. And I think that divided us. But I guess black people maybe prominently and most, maybe foremost being the recipients of this great love. Why do you not have more black racist kids coming out of the suburbs, out of Catholic schools?
It's about 10 minutes to, and the doors close at 9. So it really is time to start wrapping up. By the way, when we do the radio show, whose microphone gets turned down the most, do you think? Anyway, listen, this has been great. I really appreciate everybody contributing and being part of this discussion. This is what I wanted to have. I don't think there's any tremendous conclusions to come from this other than go out and talk, go out and meet, go out and be seen in the community if you're concerned about it.
And I can just say, just for for myself and also Andre as well, because we've talked about this before, we appreciate having a conversation. Like there are some. We ran into a friend of ours who works in political circles, and we won't say who he was, down in the warehouse district one night, and he was a little inebriated. And he had no, even though I have run into Zach in clubs, but
No.
he was.
I've never seen him inebriated since 1996 out in nightclubs. I've seen him with ladies. I've never seen him inebriated.
But so I guess our friend had a little bit of the liquid courage, so he was able to ask us legitimate questions about, well, why do black people do this? Or why do black people say this? Or why do we disagree on this and that? And he said it very clumsily, but we appreciated the spirit in which the questions were coming from, and that we could have an actual dialogue. So we appreciate and respect, and I think that's one of the things that everyone has in common, no matter what color you are, no matter what ethnicity you are. People just want to be heard and respected. I think that's it.
All right, listen, thank you very much.
I'm always going to do what I don't like if I say hello to you and you don't say hello back, or if you ask a question, I ask a question and you don't answer it. So Dennis asked a question of me and I didn't attend to.
Thank you for recognizing that.
What we have, and that's why I got back to that piece with you. One of the things that, it is simple, just reach out. Now, what does that look like as a group or individual? That is really up to us to decide and up to you to decide. How do we each reach out? And what does that mean? And how far do you go? Where do you go? Well, it's only the limitations of your imagination. Speaking of imagination, I mean, the first medium is just the tradition of storytelling, which comes from every culture as far back as we can tell in time. Making songs is another form of storytelling, as far back as time goes. Why are your competitors or detractors making the best use of the media and you are not? Why are they making the most innovative use of the media and you are not? There's an artistic class and a creative class that's all around you. They have varying viewpoints and varying skill sets, and yet you guys get diminishing returns because you don't plug into them. I would encourage you. Your story can be told through the news. It can be told through hard journalism and print. Don't overlook the fact that while you're doing that, while you're campaigning, coming up with creative ways to do it, because everyone does speak differently, and that means they also hear differently. And you need to rub their ears. Not only their hot buttons, but the language and the style in which they speak. Don't overlook the use of the media to tell original stories. Everybody from Sex and the City to Queer as Folk have managed to do it, and where are we today from those 15 years that they started? And if you go back, it's even further. Where are we? Queer as Folk is winning, right? Right? Huh? The Sex and the City, the Sluts and the City girls, they're winning, right? Right? They've changed the nation and the viewpoint, the way that some things proceed in our culture. The book's already written about team building. The book's already written about unification. The book's already written about how to get over these barriers. The books are written about how to heal. The books are written about how to create. The book's already written about, what is that, moving the window? What's the window?
The Overton window.
The Overton window. And the examples have been laid before you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you do have to, fix a flat, right? And keep it moving.
And I know that we have to get out of here, but I want to address real quick. Yes, the media is biased against you. Let's just put that out there. That is true. That is very true. I've been in the media for over a decade. Yes, they are biased. But so what? If the media is biased against you, make your own.
Yeah, nowadays it's not as hard to do. By the way, on Sunday, the Blossom Time Parade, we're looking for people to march with Jack Schrein. Get there about 1:30, show up, we'll have shirts for you, you get to march with us. We're definitely looking for people to do that. Anyway, thank you for being here, thank you for being open, and we'll do this again. Thank you.
One more thing, no one's really gonna love this. Maybe put your political headquarters in neighborhoods where you want to reach, so they know that you're right there where they are, like old school monsters. Yeah. 2 more things. This is called the Southeast Republicans. Are you in Garfield, Bedford, Maple, Independence?
Every corner of the county needs a group like this.